Good evening and welcome to the July 18th meeting of the Goffstown Capital Improvements Program Committee. I'm Earl Carroll, Vice Chair of the committee, and I'll be chairing the meeting tonight until John Heichel gets here. We are expecting John to come in. To start with, we'll introduce those people who are on the committee who are here tonight. We'll start with Brian.
I'm Brian Rose. I'm the Planning and Zoning Administrator.
Peter Georgiantis.
Alan Brown, Selectman.
Gayla Brick.
This evening, we've got three presentations. We've got Public Works, we've got the Sewer Commission, and we have the Cemetery Trustees. We also got a couple of other items to take care of. We do have the minutes of the June 6th meeting, which were not addressed last time around because we did not have a quorum. Those folks who are here tonight, you've got copies of the June 6th minutes.
I don't have them with me, but I've read them and didn't find anything wrong with them.
Okay. Any additions or corrections to those minutes? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve them.
I'll make a motion to approve if you like.
Motion approved by Alan, second by
Peter.
Peter.
Just taking a quick look here.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes of June 6th are approved. June 20th, we did not have a quorum, hence we cannot officially have minutes. So we will change that from minutes to meeting notes. Alan, Gail, and I were the only ones here last time around. We can either accept the notes or we can defer acceptance until the next meeting. I think we probably ought to accept them just to get it taken care of.
Make a motion that we accept the notes.
All right, Alan, motion to accept the notes, second by Gail?
I'll second that, yeah.
By Gail?
Good with it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any abstentions? Any nays? Peter will abstain because he was not here. Notes of the June 20th meeting are accepted. I think, rather than, I hate to do this to you, Carl, but rather than start with Carl, it's going to be the longest presentation. I think we will start. We'll start with the Sewer Commission. Jim, you want to come up and join us?
He's got PowerPoint. He may go real fast. I don't know. Good evening. I'm Jim Bouchard. I've been with the Sewer Commission for a number of years. I'm actually acting as chairman this year, and glad to be here this evening. Our CIP is relatively simple, I think, compared to what you're going to see coming before you. I don't know with people, but I believe you have a copy of our matrix in front of you. And with that being said, we have a number of items to go through. The biggest one that we have in front of us is the Manchester Wastewater Treatment Plant Capacity and Upgrade. That's approximately a $73 million job project for Manchester that's going to be stretched out over the next 10 years or so. And our portion of that is currently based on current estimates by Manchester Wastewater Treatment Plant is $4.2 million. And as we have shown, that has started now. They've already started some of the projects. One of the smaller projects has already been completed. Other ones are in design, and this is going to look at to be something in a 20-year funding cycle for us. At this point, working with Manchester, and Manchester's doing some updated figures, and they haven't not got them to us as of yet. But those of you that have been around with us for a number of years, this wastewater treatment plant upgrade really started in earnest over 5 years ago, and they're still trying to get a handle on it. They're still doing the studies. They've gotten the studies just recently completed. Now they know the projects, so it's an animal that is still alive but it's still taking form. So for the current and foreseeable future, the Sewer Commission does not see the need to go out and bond anything to cover the $4.2 million. What is happening is that's going to be over a number of years. Manchester is funding it all. They have, through the state, they've applied for some state revolving loan funds, and what we've been talking with them is they have been talking with all the other stakeholder towns, which are Bedford and Londonderry, is that they understand what it does to a small, these sewer upgrades due to a small system user like Goffstown compared to Manchester, and they're willing to work with us if we get into a bind a couple of months, can't make a payment, they'll finance it for us. So at this point, and we don't see the need for a bond on that. We have also applied to the state under the Clean Water Act for a grant application to help offset these expenditures, and we're one of the, we'll wait and see how that comes. Those applications go, they always have more need than they have money available. So presently, that's our biggest capital improvement ongoing right now, and we'll see how this develops over the next 20 years. All these upgrades that they're doing at the plant are based on EPA's new criteria for wastewater discharge regulations to the river, and that the plant's over 35 years old. It needs some help. It needs to be updated.
Jim, quick question.
Certainly, Brian.
On your worksheet that was turned in,
Yes.
it does show it on the bond line. So does that need to be changed, I guess, or do we just need to make note in the matrix that it's not going to be bond?
Why don't we make a note in the matrix right now that we are not, the Sewer Commission is not seeking a bond for that?
But is it going to be 20 years worth of payment?
It's going to be 20 years worth of payments out of us. We're building it into our, rate structure.
And that's starting 2014?
That actually has already started.
What year?
And actually, a lot of it started in 2012.
2012.
Okay, on the matrix, we're at page 6, line 252.
Yeah.
Correct. Peter?
This is all user,
Right.
right?
This is all user fee. The Sewer Commission is user-based. We don't receive tax monies, and we do not have the capacity to bond ourselves. Therefore, we have to come before the town and request a bond. We have done it in the past for a number of projects, some of which we'll talk about relatively quick, but we've always paid the bonds back for the town.
So would this project be a large increase to the ratepayers?
At presently, we're not anticipating that right now. We're doing a couple of things, Peter. We've also commissioned a rate study by our consultant, Hoyle Tanner and Associates, to go through. They did this about 5 years ago, and now that we have the wastewater treatment plant upgrades coming and the Mass Road and things that we're paying off, we've asked them to go through and do a rate study for us and give us to help advise us whether we have to increase the rates. We anticipate that there will be, I'll be honest, we anticipate there's going to have to be some rate increases sometime down the road. We just don't, we don't want to do it in a large fashion all at once.
Jim?
Yes.
A couple of things here on the matrix. We're showing Moose Club. This is not necessarily with this matrix issues. We're showing Moose Club Park. That's paid off, isn't it now?
Line item 253 Moose Club is now done.
And what about Knollcrest?
Knollcrest is still ongoing and will be paid off out in.
It says 2016.
Yeah, I was going to say it should be 2016, which it is. Yes.
It's probably a 25-year bond rather than
Yes.
20. Okay. Are there any? Before we get into your other projects, are there any joint projects that you're going to be working on with Public Works? We may get to those when Carl comes in, but I'll ask you that now.
We have a good relationship with them in terms of when they're doing like the Mass Road paving upgrades. We go out and change the manhole covers out to put the new ones in. We know like South Mass and things like that. We stay on top of that. In terms of major pipeline upgrades in conjunction with what Carl has planned for the future, we are not anticipating anything at this point for us that that we need to get in before them, or that's going to affect us, or that's going to have to. Once their project is done, and if we need to do something, we'd be caught in a moratorium. That has been coordinated through DPW and ourselves.
Okay. Why don't you go on with whatever else you got?
The line 256, annual inflow and infiltration, that's a budget we carry in our budget of $185,000. It's in our budget. It's not really, we don't consider it, a bond type thing, but a number of years ago, the CIP board sort of indicated to us that, since that's a large amount of money you should be showing as a capital improvement. Well, to us, that's our annual maintenance fee. And I guess that's what I'd like to ask tonight before the board is this something you want to continue to see as a capital improvement? We have no intention of seeking bonds for this. It's just our annual maintenance. What we budget, $185,000 for maintenance of sewers, manholes, building services, and things like this.
Historically, items that have come that are maintenance items, and we've gone round and round with this, particularly with Public Works. It really does not need to come before CIP. It's not a CIP issue. It's not a capital improvement. It's an ongoing, existing obligation.
And that's how we viewed it in the past, but when we were asked a few years ago why we didn't show it, and so we've represented it. Personally, we just assume remove it, and so it doesn't misconstrue what we're trying to do for capital improvements.
I don't think we need to see it on CIP.
Okay. Why don't we in the future, we won't remove it, and then from the future, we won't keep it in.
So delete that line 256.
Yes, please. Line 257 is the Elm Street Pump Station force main replacement. This is one of the oldest pipeline systems that we have in our pumped facilities. And force main is actually the aerial that goes over the river. We've done some upgrades in that in the past, but they've only been, some remedial action repairs and things like that. It is getting to the point that we're going to have to think about replacing that, and so we are carrying a budget in that of, $75,000 right now currently for that, and we'll go forward with that. But, I mean, that's something we keep evaluating, we keep monitoring it, and currently right now we anticipate that probably next year we're going to have to do something on it. But, again, that's a capital improvement that will be funded by the Sewer Commission and not through bonding.
So is that line correct right now, showing 2014, 75,000?
That is what we're currently budgeting for, yes. We anticipate, we've had some preliminary estimates by the DPW folks on what it will cost, and that's what we're budgeting to take care of that.
I just wasn't sure because on the worksheet it had showed to be determined. I couldn't remember if that had been updated by us afterwards or what.
Yeah, no, presently that's what we're planning on. It's, we know it's been in existence well over 45 years, and it is an aerial supported pipeline, and it's going to need some assistance, and some of the other, some of the pipes underground need to be upgraded too on that. So,
Okay.
Jim, what would you rate that as a priority?
As a priority, I would say it's a medium priority for us right now. I mean, it's in functional shape. The pipe is old. The pipe that crosses the river is exposed to the elements all times. If something we did do some work on that a while back. But if something happens to that and we have discharge in the river, we're in a whoop of mess.
On the worksheet, he's got it as a 2, Pete.
I see that, but
I'm sorry?
Worksheet says it's a class 2, which should be not an emergency type.
Not an
Right.
emergency, but necessary sooner rather than later.
Yes, to me that's a medium that we got to get moving on. It's not a low priority for us. High priority is we're in danger of losing a pipe or pump station. But yeah, as a class 2, we got to address it.
How long has this been in CIP was what I was trying to get at.
Oh, I think we've been carrying that in CIP now for 2 years, but I can't be absolutely accurate. It's been at least 2 years, Peter.
Hey, let me take a look at the final matrix from last year. That might tell us something.
Okay, it's third year, so we carried it for 2 years up to this year. Okay.
Shows 2013 on the final matrix from last year. So,
And that was pushed out, Earl, is that what it was?
looks like it was pushed out a year, so I think this may be year number 3 for this.
That was my
That's kind of
assumption.
what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
How long has it been in?
Yeah, I think this is year number 3.
Year number 3, and it's getting, we intend to address it. Line 258, Mass Road sewer upgrade. This is the ARA-funded project. It's, we got a stimulus grant of, $1.25 million and a 20-year bond on that. And that's the cost that we see forecasted out through 2019 is $89,900 to pay that project off. I will say that the commission is actively through Ellen and looking at what other options are available to pay that bond off quicker for us, and we're going to be evaluating that at the next couple of meetings of the sewer commission. The state has some attractive low-interest loans and actually zero-interest loans now available through the Clean Water Act, so we're looking at, what the impact is to our fees and to get that paid off sooner. So
Anything else, Jim?
that's it for our major, CIP items,
All
folks.
right, any additional questions for Jim? Peter, anything? Alan?
I'm good, thanks.
Gail?
All set.
Okay, Jim, thank you very much.
Thank you, Earl.
Okay. Let's see, John, you want to do, you want to do cemetery? Don't have anybody from cemetery. Okay, Megan, you can come join us. You don't have to sit in the back. You don't like doing this, do you?
Camera pans around back there, too.
All right, we've got Carl Querum, Director of Public Works.
Actually, if I could beg your indulgence, what I'd like to do while Jim is still here is kind of skip ahead. I have something that we need to discuss, and I've got it towards the end of the presentation. I'll explain in just a second why I want to have Jim here. If you've been on the committee for a while, you know that we have some bridge work that we've been carrying. Specifically, we had Henry Bridge Road. Last year we did the wing walls on West Union, and we were carrying a budget to do the wing walls or the head walls on Henry Bridge Road. Last year, when we were doing East Dunbarton Road, when we peeled the pavement off of East Dunbarton Road, we noticed some things that didn't look right to us with the expansion joints on the bridge out on East Dunbarton Road. So we kind of set it in our mind that, okay, we can't really deal with this late in this fall, but next year we're going to come back and take a closer look at that. This year, when we were doing Pleasant Street, we had the issue of the sidewalk on the Pleasant Street Bridge that we knew we needed to deal with. The sidewalk on Pleasant Street is not part of the original bridge on Pleasant Street. It was an add-on at a later date. So we started kind of looking at Pleasant Street, and we concluded that we needed to get some help from a structural engineer. So we went out and did a search for consultants, and we ended up actually hiring Quantum Consultants, which is the company that Jim Bouchard works for. And their folks came out to look at, we hired them to come out and do some design work for us on Pleasant Street. While we had them in town, we decided, well, let's take them over and let's take a peek at the East Dunbarton Road Bridge as well, because we were kind of scratching our head as to what we needed to do with it. And what we decided was that there was a lot more going on there than what we had gleaned from the DOT inspection reports and our own kind of visual inspections over the years. Henry Bridge Road, this bridge, we've had issues with several times over the last 4 or 5 years. I think 3 or 4 years ago we had to hire a welder, we had to strip the deck, we had to have it's a corrugated metal deck welded to the beams. Over time, the bouncing, a lot of those welds broke. So the bridge deck was kind of floating there. So we hired a welder to come. We had to strip the deck, and we had to do a lot of repair work to reattach the metal deck to the girders. We've had vehicles hit those girders. Earlier this year, there was that bridge collapse. What was that one? Over in Denver somewhere, the truss bridge, or Washington?
That was in Washington.
Washington State. There was a truss bridge that collapsed earlier this year, and what caught my attention when I saw that on the news was what they traced the failure to, which was a simple gusset plate where two of the girders attached together. And I knew from previous times that we have one of those same plates on the structural part of this bridge that gets clipped by trucks, by our wings. The bridge is so narrow when you come around that sharp corner at the end, everything gets into that plate. Plus, we have the wing wall issue with the whole wing wall, and if you've ever looked at that bridge on the Irving side, before you go up the hill, it's a pretty high wing wall. It's actually blowing out. It's got a bulge to it, and it's those blocks. So we've been very concerned with it for a while. So we ended up getting a contract with Quantum to take a look at several bridges, because we knew we had bridges that were coming up. The roads were coming up in the road plan, and the state's been working on trying to get more bridge funding. So we kind of said, you know what, I think it's time we step back and really take a close look at these bridges. So this is the most shocking one. What Quantum's recommendation is that the bridge really needs to be replaced. The town needs to plan to replace the bridge. This bridge is absolutely critical to the town, and I'm sure you guys remember what it was like when the bridge was shut down, because Goffstown only has 2 crossings of the river, so when you take one of them away, it really creates heartache quickly. However, if you look at the abutments, those abutments are the original abutments, the granite block abutments. We built up wing walls to build a bridge, but what's holding the bridge up is the old granite abutments, and they're really in a point of failure. Of course, there's the alignment issues that I just talked about with the sharp yanks. It really is a functionally obsolete bridge just because of the narrow width and just the amount of traffic that uses Henry Bridge Road is substantially increased. So we wanted to put it in. I mean, it's not like we got to do this next year, but we need to plan on it, because as you can see, it's a big bridge. It's an expensive bridge. This estimate is one Quantum did for us. So we're going to obviously try to get grant money, but with the current state of funding at DOT, with the road toll that didn't pass last year, they're not even adding new bridges until 2023. So if DOT doesn't plug the hole with their funding, we won't be able to wait and get state aid to help us with this. So it's a big concern. We just learned of it, a week or 2 ago, so we thought it was appropriate. As a matter of fact, the Board of Selectmen hasn't seen this yet. This is going to be attached to their quarterly report that they see Monday night, so they're not even aware of this yet. But obviously we wanted to put it in. So what I have done, line 201 in your matrix, and when we go through our slides, you'll see at the bottom right, we tried to tie each project so we didn't have to do a lot of flipping back and forth to what you're looking at. And all you had in your matrix before was the wing wall repair. But we believe now that it needs to be a more substantial funding source, and what year we plug it in, I think, is what we really need to talk about.
You're looking at 2.8 million for this, Carl?
Right now, that's what we're looking for, and normally DOT is going to pay 80% of the cost. but this is not in DOT's program yet. And right now, I don't think we can afford to wait until 2023 when we might be able to get it in DOT's program. If the road toll passes in the next session, the road toll increase, there's a chance that we would be able to move this into the program sooner and get some help from DOT.
Where would you like us to put it? You've got the wing wall repairs in 16. You want this in 16, 17?
Maybe what we do is put design in 1 year, and I don't know, what, did you break out?
I think I have a breakout. I can provide you a breakout on design. I think we gave you.
Yeah, we have 250 to
Yes.
300,000 for
Right.
engineering, construction, admin,
Yeah.
and then 2.1 to 2.5 million. So I used the higher number
Yeah.
to plug in here for now.
What we
It's probably appropriate just to put it all in the same year, and then you guys, once we get the money, whether it be bond or whatever,
Yeah.
then we take it off to CIP, and it's just part of your planning.
What I'd suggest, Earl, because we've got several of these, and there are several things that you haven't seen before. So maybe we should kind of hold off of where do we want to put it until we see all of it.
Okay.
And really, you folks are going to have this 6-year matrix that you need to kind of take the dips and valleys and smooth it out a little bit. So I'm sure trying to squeeze these into that, we're going to have to figure it out. So I don't think we're set on, the bridge is going to fall down in 2017, but we need to plan for it. We need to be aware that there are serious deficiencies here, and we need to start planning. If we planned it in 2017 and then the road toll passes next year and DOT says we can get you in 2019 for 80%, we're going to try to make that bridge last a couple more years and get 80% from the state. So,
Quick question, Carl. Who constructed that bridge originally? I mean, who's the construction company that put that in?
well, the town forces built it. I don't know who the bridge manufacturer was. The town forces did the abutments.
And that bridge is not even, just getting on to 20 years old. That's kind of a
Yeah.
short
Not even
lifespan for a
20
bridge.
years.
It's not even 20
Even
years.
Abutments are original.
Yeah.
No, I understand the abutments. I get that part. But I mean, the bridge part itself is what we're talking about here, really, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, and I wasn't here when this bridge was built, but talking to folks that were, the town didn't have the money to do an expensive bridge. I never would have put a bridge like that. That was not a long-term bridge.
Well, that's not what we were told at the time, though.
Well, and I wasn't here, so I don't know what you were.
No, and that's what I was getting at. But I'm trying to figure out, and I'm looked ahead already. I see we got several more of these same issues.
Yeah.
I'm saying, are we looking at something we should, how do we get a guarantee on some of these things that, that 20-year, less than a 20-year bridge is not really unacceptable for a town because, as you say, that bridge is a really.
Alan, hang on a second. Megan?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
just want to mention that when we did our inspection with New Hampshire DOT, they said this is not on the red list yet, but it may land on the red list very soon because of the substructure. The abutments are the bigger issue, which may land this on the red list. But he said because of the combination of the abutments, which are near red list, and the fact that he said it could have been very quickly after it was built, just the width was not wide enough for what we're receiving for traffic and whatnot, that's the functionally obsolete part, is the width is not appropriate. So, but structurally, it sounded like to me, it's the abutments that are the true failure, and that just the width issue is the biggest issue with the superstructure.
Okay, Peter?
I understand what you're saying, Megan, but if you were around at the time when this whole deal was going down with replacing that bridge, the taxpayers and the folks in town were said, those abutments are plenty good enough, we're going to give you a good bridge, you won't have to worry about it. You can say that it was, now you can say the town didn't do a good job at the time. You can say that now. They made a mistake.
Well, hindsight's always 20/20.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and the other thing I would
It's
point
extremely
out,
costly, too.
Yeah.
the other thing I would point out is, history is history. The fact of the matter is, we gotta deal with the bridge.
And is this going to be subcontracted, the town's going to try to do this one?
I couldn't answer that right now, but that's a subcontracted price. That's not a town
And
price.
then, is that considered in the snails? Snails.
Oh, no, I don't know, if you take that in, the environmental permitting and all that stuff?
That doesn't even come up until, typically, Peter, when you start the process, that doesn't even show up until you get into the design process. So to be honest with you right now, I wasn't even aware of any of the snails and things, but that, and
Well,
as
when
part
we
of,
built
as part
that,
of the
what
process.
happened is it stopped the whole project for
Yeah, that's right.
Weeks and
Now that,
weeks
I had
and
forgotten about it. But the other,
mussels or snails or something that they discovered down there, and it's put a stop to the
the
whole
process requires that you have to go through the cultural, DOT's cultural resource review. You might even have to do some archaeological, you might have to do some, some other things that don't develop until you get into the engineering study and review process by DOT and Division of Historical Resources and everybody else, Fish and Game and everything like
Are
that.
you almost telling us that there are issues there that you don't know what you're gonna get till you get there?
Well, the
Is that-
process, we know there's a potential anywhere in the Piscataqua River for zebra mussels or the brook floaters.
Right.
So that's something we now would plan on. When this bridge was first built, nobody knew about it. It was a surprise. When we've done projects now, it's part of our permitting. We hire somebody to go check and see if they're there. So you kind of build it into the schedule. That what hurts is when it comes up and scares you. More of a concern for me is when you start playing with those granite abutments, now it's a cultural resources issue. And we have no idea what those folks might make us do. I think one of the things we talked about is actually putting the supports for the bridge, setting back and try to leave.
What we talked about when we were there, Megan coordinated this. There was two people from, myself included, from our company, and a gentleman from the DOT Bureau of Planning and Community Assistance, a bridge engineer who used to be head of the bridge department up there. And we looked at that, and you currently have a span 126 feet. And what we looked at, the more practical approach to this is go to a 145-foot bridge, put your abutments back behind the existing abutments, which helps solve a lot of the problems that you can with cultural resources. Plus, you can build it without getting into the waterway, and then you don't have cofferdams and that type of thing. But as Megan has said, the superstructure has its issues, but the problem is the substructure. You got what they did is they put a concrete cap on top of the existing granite stones. Those are all eroding away from the road salts and rain, dripping onto them and things. So that, you got some issues there. The bearing seats are basically wearing away. The bearing seat what holds up each of the girders. So and as you can see, it's all. It appears to be. It may have been at one point dry laid granite masonry, but it's been mortared up and to try to hold it in place.
And the wing walls, you can see the concern there is those cracks kind of mid-block, which is telling us that it's really bulging out those blocks. Well, they've been a concern for several years, which is why it was in CIP, but they're really deteriorating quickly. And then under the superstructure itself, there's the tear in the gusset plate that I was mentioning, and you can see under the metal corrugation, just salt is obviously getting through there, and that's the area where all the welds had broken, and we had to have repairs done. Which, that corrugated metal, especially on a span like this, it's very flexible, and with all the truck traffic bouncing over it all the time.
Didn't we break a loader or something over there on those bridge expansion joints a few years ago?
Yeah, we had when we were plowing it, we caught one of the edges. That didn't cause any of that damage, but it caused damage to the loader and the loader operator at the time. But anyway, that is kind of the big one. These Terrell Hill Road, both that and East Dunbarton Road are sister bridges. They're the same type of construction. Again, it was a very low-budget bridge when it was built. What we're seeing is there's a lot of scouring. The abutments are undermined, and we have some pictures to show you the amount of rust and scale and corrosion in the beams. Several of the bolts that hold the girders in place are literally just sheared off. The way those guardrails are attached, it's very inadequate. So we have, in in this case, I think, it talks about repairs, but this was a replacement, right?
It's replacing the superstructure, so the,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
believe the
abutments
abutments
are fine.
underneath are, should be adequate once
Yeah.
we do some engineering and a study to make sure they're adequate. But the superstructure, needs to be replaced.
And you can see just the steel underneath there and what is happening to it. It's really kind of frightening when you crawl up in there and start really looking at it closely. And this, like I said, it's the exact same kind of construction. It's a little bit newer. Oh no, it was built the same year, but it's the same kind of issues. The Terrell Hill Road one is probably a little worse. But you see how the guardrails are attached? It's just welded to the side of the girder. You can see the rust and the corrosion. So if a vehicle really got into those guardrails, I'm not so sure that
They would hold it.
would hold it.
It's not an approved design right now.
Yeah. So those are some issues, and then we have, oops, I'm going the wrong way, I'm sorry.
And none of these are on the state list.
No, currently they're not. Parker Station Road is on our road plan eventually, so we also went out and took a look at it. It's really for its age, because this one has not been replaced, so it's an old concrete bridge, and we have some pictures underneath there. Unfortunately, we know already is going to be considered a historic structure just by its age and its type of construction. But the guardrails are inadequate, so we know we need to do some repairs on the deck and put a membrane on there, and we've got to do something with the guardrails and design a new way to attach those. And if you look up underneath there, and that lower left picture shows, what's that called, Jack Arch?
Jack Arch.
It's a Jack Arch Bridge, which is definitely considered a historic structure. We had one of these on Harry Brook, the one on Henry Bridge Road over Harry Brook was one of these, and we had to do all kinds of stuff for cultural resources when we replaced it. So I fully expect we'll be talking to them when we rehab this one. So this one is just a rehab job. It's not a complete replacement. So, that would probably be one I'd consider low-hanging fruit that we should get to sooner rather than later. New Boston Road Bridge is on, further out past Pleasant Street. It's the same kind of, roughly the same kind of bridge as the one on Pleasant Street, constructed in 1933. And again, here we have the scouring and undermining along the abutments. The sidewalk, the sidewalk was added at a later date. It's very unsafe the way it's there. It's been hit by cars many, many times. The cable guardrails are not adequate. So we're really, looking at several things there to kind of shore it up. And again, repairing the deck, protecting it with a membrane, and repairing new guardrails, new modern day, safer guardrails. So these are just some photos of what we're seeing out there. In the lower right, the chain link fence, we've tried to weld that to the structure several times, but it just never really lasts very long. Everything's so rotted. Pleasant Street Bridge, this was the one we were hoping to just take care of this year. But as we dug into it, it's a little more than our maintenance budget can handle. So we decided to kind of push it off to next year. Hopefully we can get in and get this taken care of before we do all the final paving out on Pleasant Street. But we're going to have to put a brand new structure alongside the old bridge. And it's going to have to be designed as a safe, its own bridge just for the sidewalk. So the estimate for $80,000 is to basically replace the sidewalk out there.
So you were spending $115,000 really? on that bridge.
The 35.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
This year we're
The
doing,
The pedestrian
repairs
bridge,
are on the bridge itself,
yeah.
though.
The pedestrian bridge, pedestrian walks the sidewalk is actually a separate bridge that just abuts up to it, so.
But when we do the road, we're gonna do the repairs on the deck itself, so when we pave it, we don't have to go back and deal with the main part of the structure again. We'll just have to deal with the sidewalk. And then we have the bridges over Bog Road. I thought there was actually 3 bridges out there, but there's only these 2. Very old bridges, but relatively good shape, for their age, and for where they're located. So we do see signs of concrete spalling. We did have one of these, and I think it might be this one, suffered serious damage during the flooding, and DOT came in, a DOT crew came in and actually kind of shored it up and did some repairs for us. But
actually the other one.
It's the other one, 071.
I
Yep.
had maintenance in 2007.
okay. Yeah, so that one, actually all the footings were touched up by DOT in '07. But there is a lot of kind of, this one more cosmetic repair and dealing again with the guardrails. This one, there's a little more actual distress on the bridge itself that needs some attention. So, we've done, I guess I'd call it a comprehensive kind of look at our bridges. And we've got some work that we need to plan on in the next 5, 6, 10 years, whatever it ends up being. So we just wanted to get it in here, make you aware of it. And we'll kind of deal with it as it comes. I did not have time to actually put together the forms yet, but I'll get those to you. If I don't get them tomorrow, I'll get them early next week and get them to you.
One quick question, Carl. Do we have any kind of a program where we actually go out and, a lot of these bridges, I mean, look at all this rust and whatnot, do we even go out and wash these bridges at all, springtime, summertime, clean the salt and all the brine and the sand off it? Because that's where your biggest rot comes from not cleaning them.
Yeah,
Do we do that at all, or do we not?
We have, there have been,
I mean, we don't have, do we have a scheduled program at all, or nothing?
No, we've had DOT kind of help us with that when we've seen the need, but we don't have a regular program. They're inspected every 2 years by DOT's bridge inspection folks, and when we see an issue show up, we would deal with it at that time. But no, we don't have a regular schedule of that.
Seems like maybe we should look into that, because these bridges aren't old, but they're going out the window in a hurry, and a lot of it's probably maintenance. If we could just take and do some work to them, keep up with it, get some more time out of them.
Yeah.
Because that's big steel, and I know it's got scale on it and whatnot, but as far as it falling in the river right off, I don't see that happening unless the abutment's coming apart on it.
Yeah. Some of those big beams will actually have holes just all right through. It's that bad.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm getting to. I said, maybe we should have been maybe looking back. It's easy to look back, but because we use a lot of salt in this town and no sand at all, and that's a lot of the reason most of the stuff's going out.
Interested, the bridges we replaced in the 90s need to be replaced again, and the ones in the 30s,
Yeah, right up on top of it.
they're very shape.
Yeah.
That's something.
Because if you notice, they were all concrete.
Oh, yeah.
All the old ones were concrete, which. So,
The Terrell Hill Road Bridge was redone in '94. Was that another town project?
yeah, the town worked with a company called Dop and Dop. And, again, the town did the site work, the town did the abutments. Dop and Dop would have come in and installed the steel and
The decking
the
and
bridge, yeah.
so on.
Yeah, they were kind of I don't want to call them prefab, but pre-engineered bridges, and those guys would come in and work with you to install them. But
So we need to find out the numbers and go I think, start with what Carl's put on for dates in the
Yeah.
matrix, and then we can
Well, I
move
think
from
we've got
there.
to take another look at this stuff, before, because without worksheets and without dates, without showing this on the matrix, it's really very difficult for us to determine how to balance these projects out. You know, I mean, it's entirely probable, Carl, that we're gonna have you come back, at a callback meeting.
Yep, that's fine.
So if we can get this just plugged in at the dates that Carl recommends, and then we can go from there, would
Yeah,
you say
yeah,
that's?
Brian, if you would do that for our next meeting. I guess you wanna go to vehicles now, Carl?
Yeah, just, is there any, do you think you have any more questions that Jim might be able to help us with? If not, let him get home.
See you, Jim.
All right, well, thank you, sir.
Good job on the slides.
Now we'll run through, kind of back to the top of the matrix.
You wanna
And,
use your handout here, or you wanna go to the matrix for,
well, again, I tie, whatever you want to work off, I tie, each slide is tied to the line on your matrix.
let's at least go to the matrix anyway here.
So you wanna start with line 55, Carl,
Page.
is that how I?
Yeah.
Page 2, line 55. And this is a 95 Freightliner that you're looking to replace this year, Carl.
Yeah, we've actually looked to replace it in past years. You know, the story of our fleet is that of deferred maintenance. This year, DPW has no vehicles. Now, this committee has always approved a regular schedule for vehicle replacement, but when it moves on through the budget process, those are the things that get cut. So, you know, here we have 100 pieces of rolling stock that we have to take care of, and this year we literally have not one single vehicle being replaced, which creates what you're about to see, which is a very large bubble in the upfront part of the matrix. This unit,
Yeah.
this unit is, we bought it used when we started our hauling, our internal hauling. We bought it as just a backup vehicle. It had pretty high miles when we bought it. Now it's up to 656,000 miles, which is not really the big problem for an over-the-road tractor. But we do have some other issues with it. The transmission and the power of the engine are really not very good for us for long haul. But yet the long chassis isn't great for getting it around in a close quarters in town either. We're hauling now, currently, we're hauling up to Bethlehem, so we're hauling right up into the notch. And when we have to use this vehicle, it's a pretty slow ride up that hill. So, you know, it's something we definitely need to deal with. Our frontline truck is not bad, but our backup truck is where we're suffering. So we feel it's time to get a new frontline truck and move our 2005, I think it is, back to a backup vehicle in size.
Is that the 2004 Freightliner?
Yeah, that would become the backup, and we'd have two tractors that were specifically designed for the job that we need to perform with them.
How many miles are on the 2004 we have?
According to this,
Yeah, it should-
371.5.
Yeah, so
So
this.
I think gonna have many miles on it yet, so it's really not even broke in yet. I mean, really come right down to it.
Yeah, that's still a good truck. It's
Yeah.
still a good truck.
And it was a decision of the DPW to drive all the way up to Berlin, up to Bethlehem, instead of going to Candy, or to Allenstown.
Well, it was a cost-saving decision that the selectmen made. And it has performed as we hoped. We have been saving considerable amount of money.
Enough to pay for a truck.
Even with the mileage
Yeah.
factor.
If this was a business decision, I'd already have if it was my company, the truck would already be replaced, because we're saving enough to pay for.
So with the amount of fuel and the extra man hours, and
Yep.
you're saving that amount of money.
You're saying you're still ahead of the game.
Oh, yeah. We're doing very well with it. So, The next one, you know, I know Earl will remember this, I think Peter was around at the time, but many years ago, we made the decision, we have 10 mainline dump trucks, but we decided many years ago to keep an 11th vehicle, and it actually has a plow route in the wintertime, so it's not really a backup truck, but it's not a year-round use vehicle. It's kind of sits in the yard just in case we need it, and until it snows, and then it has an actual route, and it goes out and it does its thing. So what you see in the matrix for replacement is a 2000 Sterling dump truck. However, we wouldn't actually get rid of that vehicle, which is what's pictured there. It would move to the backup truck position. So I added a frame to talk about the backup truck, just so you had some idea of what that looks like. You know, the backup is one of our old, it's the only, I think, surviving Mack dump, so it's not officially on your matrix because it's the 11th truck. So this is the one that would actually go away, and that it's actually behind this truck in the picture. We didn't get a close-up, but I can tell you it's very, very bad. It's in worse shape than what you're going to see in these pictures.
Which, the Mack or the Sterling?
The Mack.
The Mack.
These are pictures of the Sterling. The Mack is much worse. Every so many years, we rehab the bodies. We send them out to get them all repaired and blasted and repainted. So I don't know exactly when this one was done last, but it's been repaired over its life already, at least once, maybe twice.
Actually, the Mack you're talking about, Carl, I think is line 62, the 96 Mack with 12,000 miles on it.
That's
12,000
correct.
hours.
12,000 hours on it, rather.
Yeah, it is line 62. So that's the one that we would actually get rid of, and the Sterling would become a backup. You know, part of the problem with these trucks is the four-season bodies are great for us from a operational perspective. You know, we don't have to slide sanders in and out all the time. We don't have all the sanders hanging around that we have to maintain. But the underbelly sander is also, you know, it sits there and it's just blowing the salt right up under the vehicle all day when it's out plowing and treating the roads. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. And you know, we do have a wash bay, but we have 20 vehicles involved in a plowing operation, so it's usually a day or two or three before they're all run through the wash bay after the storms. And then a lot of times in the worst part of winter, you're going right from plowing and sanding, salting to snow cleanup. So you don't really get that time where the trucks are you know, free to put them right in and wash them. So
I know we've gone round and round over the years on this, Carl, but what would you replace it with? A Sterling, a Mack, a Ford?
whatever truck meets the spec and is the low bid price, really. Lately, you know, several years ago, Freightliner was getting every bid. Now International seems to be getting every bid. But when we go out to bid, we're open to anybody that wants to.
Do we bid them individually on a town side, or do we go with the state bid program?
We look at the state, but we end up usually bidding them on the town side. The state specs a slightly different truck. You know, the majority of what the state's plowing is straight ahead, and they don't have the hills. It's a little different use. So our spec is a little bit different. We usually look at the state just to see if they're getting a really good deal, but the trucks we spec are slightly different.
Okay, next you got your Caterpillar loader.
We did some pretty major rehabbing of this, I think, a few years back. So it's a 97 loader, got almost 18,000 hours on it. What we're looking to do, it's really, the issues right now are if we were to keep it, we're looking at major overhauls for engine, transmission, and it really needs new pins and bushings. So, you know, if we end up deferring replacement, we're gonna have to look at budgeting for some pretty substantial maintenance. When we replace it, our intention is to replace it with a versatile, multiple attachment front end so that we can, which is the same story with this backhoe loader, so you'll see a picture of it in a second. But it gives us a little more functionality for the front bucket. This is the little backhoe that's at the transfer station. You know, it's a 94. We're looking to replace it. Again, it's getting in need of some pretty substantial overhaul work. And it's old enough that we're just kind of thinking we ought to replace it. And if we do, we'd look to get these multifunction attachments so that the thing can.
You go with an IT, is that what it is?
Yeah, I don't know if they call it that now, but yeah.
Well, you know, that's what it is.
Excuse me, Carl, have you looked into, have you actually talked to Caterpillar on these things? Because they have a major rebuild program, but there's less than half a new.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
for the amount that we, you know, we use it a lot, I understand that, but we don't use it as you would in a construction zone to use it.
Yeah.
I mean, if that was in a pit loading 24/7, it'd be different, but, you know, where we don't use it as much as they would, maybe we should look into having just a rebuild.
Well, I know Mark looks at that. I'm not sure what he got for numbers, but he does talk to Cat and he does look at that.
Because I know they have a program, they'll take that machine, take it back, and they replace every pin, every bushing, rebuild the transmission, the motor, all the pistons, and paint it and send it back to you just like brand new.
Yeah.
And it'd be less than half a new.
And we did that with the Vacon, last year or the year
Yeah,
before.
so I mean, I'm just saying, you know, why not, we should maybe follow that route, you know, to a
We
certain
can follow
extent.
it, Alan, but what I'm concerned about is that a Band-Aid approach? I mean, you're replacing a lot of stuff.
Essentially, it'd be a brand new.
But when you've got a piece of equipment or a vehicle that is of a certain age with a certain number of miles or hours, depending on how you're looking at it, you can replace a lot of components, but there's still other stuff in it. It's, in this case, 20 years old. What's going to break next?
Well, from my own experience, I've got vehicles in my yard that are almost antiques, and I'm still running them every day, and I don't. And they're trucks that are safe as anybody else's on the street, and the backhoes and loaders are all the same way. There is a fine line, I understand, but there's a line when you're spending tax dollars that you need to look at.
Absolutely.
You know.
And we're never opposed to looking.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying, if anybody's looked into that, I'd like to know that, because there is a big savings to be had there. I know there
But,
is.
you know, remember too, here at CIP,
No, yeah,
we're not a budget committee.
No, I just.
And what we've got to do is we've got to evaluate what a department head says they need or want, as the case may be, and see how that fits into an overall program.
That's also a fine line, Earl.
Absolutely.
Because when you're looking at what we're looking at now with the situation with bridges and having no replacements this year, I mean, we now have to start looking at.
But, you know, Peter, you and I were around back in the days when we had to replace virtually the entire fleet at Public Works, and we went to that lease purchase thing, which worked short-term. But as you strung it out over a number of years, it was a disaster. And I don't think we should get the town into a position, whether it's Public Works or police or fire, when we're talking about vehicles, of Band-Aiding this stuff, and all of a sudden, the whole damn fleet needs to be replaced because we've got too many vehicles that are completely out of service.
Exactly what you're saying. That was 30 years ago. Vehicles and equipment have changed tremendously. And there are a lot, now you'll find that these pieces of equipment are more of a component type of a vehicle. You can replace this piece, you can replace this. Heck, you can buy the whole frame of the cabin chassis and the whole 9 yards, called a glider unit. I mean, so there's a lot of different things that can be done that maybe couldn't have been done 30 years ago when we were in that jam, you know, with dollars. I mean, and I don't wanna put my budget committee hat on here, but like I said before, we have to go through and plug this stuff in, and, whew,
Oh,
you got a 300%
we're
increase
looking
in it
at,
right
you know,
now.
at humongous dollars here.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. And let's face it, whether it's political or not political, this kind of money is not gonna happen.
Oh, exactly. So I think what Alan is saying is, geez, if we can get another 10 years out of that loader, or even 5 more years, or 6 more years out of it for half the price,
Yeah, you get along on that,
I'm
sure.
not saying-
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah,
using
yeah,
that
I
as an
understand, yeah, numbers, right. I'm just saying there are options, we better try, because where the taxes are right now, and the way
I just want
the way
to,
the economy is right now, you're gonna have to look to try and get yourself in a range where you can
I'm
get it.
nervous about that bridge. If that Henry Bridge
Yeah.
goes down, we're, pardon the expression, screwed.
Oh, yeah.
I know, I lived through that.
Believe me, I'm not looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, that may be a more important thing to look at than which will come into it all in
Well,
budget, I'm sure.
That's
right.
that's deliberative.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
but you
exactly.
know what I'm
Let
saying?
let me kind of, I guess, throw an offer on the table, because for the last 3, 4, 5 years, I have really pessimistically looked at our process, our capital process, and not the fault of this committee, but the system is broke. You know, this committee spends all summer looking at the 6-year, trying to balance the needs, and then once it moves to the financial part of the process, it's whack, 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 and everything just rolls away. Well, it doesn't go away, it just becomes more expensive, and the snowball rolls down a hill. I really think that as a town, we need to take a step back. These are real needs. These are not things that the department heads just want to do because we like to spend money. These are things that the taxpayers have bought, they've paid for, they need them. We need to maintain them. So, you know, whether it's this committee or whether it's this committee with folks from budget and selectmen and economic development, and whoever else we think needs to be part of the discussion, but I think kind of need to step back and look at the whole capital thing again and say, look, we need to commit to, sounds like Bob Wheeler, doesn't it? We need to commit to the CIP.
Don't go there.
But that's, you know, there needs to be that buy-in, and right now I don't think there's a buy-in. Right now I think it's two separate things. And I'll offer that whatever I can do to support that, we would do. You know, whether it's looking at options, looking at lease arrangements, looking at whatever we gotta do to really take a hard look at everything, I'm all for it. We'll do whatever we have to do to help you with the numbers, or help with the numbers, because the fact of the matter is, all these things have to be done. We can shift them a year or two, or maybe get 10 more years out of one of these vehicles, but there's still 99 more vehicles. So we can't fix it all. So,
All right, let's move on to
line 68 and 69.
your trailer.
2 of our 100-yard trailers. We have some pretty substantial issues. These things, obviously, they're workhorses in the department. These are the trailers that sit on the end of those compactors and have trash squashed into them all day long, every day, then get hauled off wherever they gotta go to get dumped out. And originally, what we were looking to do is just replace these 2 trailers. So we were looking at $85,000 a piece. They are aluminum trailers, so I did ask Mark to go back and take a look at what it would take to rehab them. So about $30,000 each is a rehab cost. The issue that we have, and right this week is a prime example of it, between the transfer, the recycling center and the trash hopper, we really are tight on our capacity. And we had a shutdown this week. The place that takes our recycling down in Charlestown, they had a major equipment breakdown in their processing line, so they had to put us on hold for 3 days. And we really, it was tough. We got stuff coming right out the doors of the building, so if it would have been 4 or 5 days, we would have really been in trouble. So what we're thinking we want to do is replace, get 1 new trailer, but then instead of spending $85,000 on another new trailer, just rehab the 2. So we would have kind of a spare extra trailer would give us 5 100-yard trailers, so we have one on the wall, one on the road, and one spare in the yard for each of the waste streams.
So Carl, is that new trailer that you're talking about on this matrix, or is that
Yeah, it's
a
on
thing-
line
something that you need to
233.
propose? Okay.
233 is where that shows up. It's under the solid waste section.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I see 3 here, 68, 69, and 70.
70, I believe, is one of our other existing.
Yeah, it's a Stecco. And 233,
Why do the other two come under the solid waste?
They are all solid waste recycling trailers, so really depends how you want to show it. All the vehicles were up top, but they really are trash. And if you're going to do that, the trash trucks, the recycling trucks, they are all really solid waste. So wherever you want to reflect it, doesn't matter to us.
I don't think it makes much difference, Pete. It's all on the bottom line under Public Works anyway when you get down to the end of it.
Just for consistency's sake, might make sense to move line 233 under
Put it with the other trailers.
with the other ones.
Yeah, and it makes no difference to me. As long as the money stays there, I don't care what line it's on.
All right, so you're going to recondition 2 of them
Recondition the 2 aluminum ones we have.
and buy a new one?
Get a new one, so we have 5 trailers.
All right, the 97, we're showing nothing there. That's the oldest of the bunch. Is that one still?
I don't think it is. That's the old metal one with the ram. Where did I do my glasses?
Sitting in your shirt.
97. What line
Line
is it on?
70.
So it's not showing as a replacement out there. My guess is that that's a ghost. There should be 400-yard trailers.
I see 3.
Yeah, there's only 3 on the matrix.
My guess, and I'll follow up and get back to you, but my guess is that 97's been replaced. Because a 97 Stecco would have been a steel trailer with a push ram. 7 tons of ram just to push the trash out when we get where we're going. So we've gone to walking floors. I think at this point everyone we're using is a walking floor. So I would guess that 97's been replaced with something newer, which is why it doesn't show up on your matrix.
All right, so if you would check that, get
So
back to.
You think that's gone, you said, right?
Yeah.
And I don't see the.
There's another Spec Tech on line 373 as a 2008.
Line 373. $373?
Actually, it would know it's vehicle 373. I'm sorry, it's line 98, I guess.
98?
Yeah.
Got it.
48-foot trailer?
So that's your 5th one?
No, that'd be the 4th, and I think that one that says 97 is it's a newer, the 97's been replaced. So we have to plug in whatever, whether it's a 2007 or 2008 or whatever year we replaced it. I'll have to get.
Okay, so you'll get me the info on that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
You jot these things down?
Let us move on to line 75, Ford F-50. Is that a 6-wheel?
It's a small 6-wheel dump. For this type of vehicle, pretty high miles. And our other 550s, we actually have 4-season bodies and wing plows. This is like the first one we bought way back when, and it still has a slide-in sander and there's no wing to it. So it's really not as functional for us as the other ones. And if you look at it, again, rust is pretty pervasive. This has been refurbed at least once already.
Carl, what do you have these trucks on, a 10-year cycle,
Not anymore.
eight-year cycle?
The large trucks used to be a 10-year cycle. I think they've been pushed out to 12. Pickup trucks were a 7-year cycle. I think they've been pushed out to 9. The F-550, I'm not sure. It's probably in between those two. And that cycle matrix has been blown. Anyway, we got it all stacked up in 1 year at this point, so.
So on the 550, you're planning on putting on a Four Seasons body?
Yeah. And then we have one of the pickups, 2004 F-350. This is basically the sewer. This is the one the sewer commission bought the first time. The town's supposed to buy it this time. We're rotating back and forth. And then we have our roll-off cans. You know, back whenever it was, 2004 or 5, we bought our own roll-off trailer. We bought all these cans. The cans that we bought are getting in really rough shape. Again, they've been patched. This is another situation where we don't have the capacity. We have no ability, you know, I don't know how long it would take us to rebuild one of these things, but we can't afford to take it off the wall because we have no spares to put in their place. We basically have one on the wall and one on the truck most days. So, you know, we've patched them and band-aided them, but they're really getting in pretty rough shape. So, again, what Mark and I talked about is if we replace the 4 cans, so we have 4 new cans and we've kind of, okay, now we're operating. Before we got rid of these 4, we'd kind of try to piecemeal a couple of them together to have a couple of spares, and we can do the repairs and stuff. It's just we can't pull one in the shop long enough right now to do that.
Aren't there companies out there that do that?
Yeah, but again, we'd have to send it to them, and we don't have the spares to even be able to do that. Road plan, this is pretty standard stuff every year, so I didn't bring a lot of information. Just this is the graph that we presented last year in the budget committee. The road plan has just with the economy, what the economy is. The road plan has taken some pretty substantial hits over the last 2, 3, 4 years, and we're hoping that that's just a blip, but
We're now on page 5, line 192.
yeah. So what we always ask for is to go back to the original road plan number. Quite frankly, I think next year we probably need to reevaluate that whole road plan, the projection, because when we did the road plan originally back in 2001, we planned on 3% increases each year. And several years ago, we had an enormous increase in our costs when petroleum took its jump. And so the road plan, the original road plan, never contemplated that kind of cost increase. So between that and the budget cuts, I'm not sure the original road plan numbers are going to keep us on track anyway. But for now, that's all we're asking for. The next one is line 195, the West Lawn Cemetery. The trustees are not here. However, I can tell you that, I did meet with them. This is what they would like to accomplish. They're hoping this year to get the gate on the new section of cemetery, the gate installed. Next year, they'd like to have money. They're hoping to free up some money that they have called Cypre money that they have in their trust funds.
The trustees met with the cemetery trustees at our last trustees meeting. We've referred some of that matter to back through the selectmen's, or through the town administration office to town council as to how exactly, who's gonna be responsible for filing that cypre petition with the probate court. There is a very substantial amount of money out there. Easily enough to cover these costs. But whether or not it's gonna be usable for that is a whole other story. Because it's possible that what may happen, excuse me, is that money is gonna need to go to general cemetery maintenance as opposed to expansion and construction. So we don't know where that's gonna go yet.
Well, anyway, what the trustees would like to plan on is completing the fence next year, and then in 15, hire a surveyor to go in there and monument all the lots and get it laid out so that it's actually ready to receive burials. Obviously, this gives us many more years for that cemetery. The Worthley Hill Road drainage, which is line 196 on your matrix, it's been around now for several years. We are going to, hopefully this summer, take care of the very bottom of the hill, just up from Lamson. You see where Lamson is, there's the first two houses on the left. Right at that area is where the
This
hill.
is Lamson here, right?
No,
Up at
up
the
above.
top. top of the
Top.
street.
Yeah, it's top.
Okay.
What happens, Worthley Hill's a very steep hill, and when it gets down to those bottom three houses is where the grade flattens out. Well, it's a 12-inch metal pipe. It's definitely not adequately sized. So at the bottom of the hill there, the water, by the time it gets to the bottom, it's just blowing right out of the top, and it's flooding those properties at the bottom. So we did include money this year, even though we didn't get the money to do the whole drainage project. We're at least going to upgrade the bottom 100 feet or so where it is a really big problem.
This would be Tyler here then, right?
Yes, yeah, that's Tyler. But basically, the whole hill, I mean, you can drive up there and take a look for yourself. If you go up in a heavy rainstorm, you can see the water spraying right out of the ground. It's undersized pipes. It's all just 12-inch pipe, and with all the development up there over the years, it's definitely not adequate. If Viking Orchards gets built, they're going to be doing some of the work from Tyler up. They'll be fixing up the road, but from Tyler down to Lamson, it's going to be on the town to fix it. So we're looking at this more as a drainage project than a road plan project, just because it's a very substantial drainage upgrade.
Carl, I noticed on the matrix you got it as a 1, and on your spec sheet you got it as a 2. Is it necessary or is it critical?
Depends where you live. I think.
Yeah, if you live on Lamson, it's critical.
Yeah, if you live at the bottom of that hill, it's critical. Even the folks that are up the hill, it's damaging their property. So, in the big scheme of things, like we were just talking about with everything that the bridges and everything else, and by the way, we haven't even talked about the rest of the drainage system that we're going to have to jump into with this new stormwater permit. That's going to be another whole kettle of fish that we don't have our hands around yet. So it's not, none of this is going to go away. So I'd say it's a 2, because there's just so much on our plate. So salt brine, equipment, line 198. We've had this on the matrix for a while. DOT started using it. We've kind of been watching what DOT does with it. It's it appears to be a very helpful tool in the toolbox. The city, when they built their new highway garage, they put in salt brine equipment, so they've started doing their main drags with salt brine. My opinion is it is a very effective, it's a pre-treatment. You go out the day before the storm, you get the brine there, it dries, and it's just sitting there waiting. The idea is, it gives you the chance to, it avoids the ice pavement bond from forming in the very beginning of the storm. You know, even on a good day, when we get the call, it's usually 20 minutes, half hour before we actually, from when we get the call to when we actually have trucks out on the street. This kind of gives you that window where it kind of holds that off, and it keeps the ice bond from starting. The reason that it becomes critical is in the current draft EPA permit, they're as much as requiring it. We need to cut our chloride use. We have chloride impairments in some of our streams. So we need to find ways to reduce our salt use. This is one of the best management practices that they're pointing to help us do that. So I think if the new permit, if it stays, it's going to move from a desirable to a necessary thing that we're going to have to include.
Just won't be able to do porous pavement if you're going to do that.
This is the equipment. It's not something that we can do with our existing trucks. More or less, we'd have to have a slide-in tank that we could put into one of the trucks. You have to mix. You actually use your own salt, and there's an agitator in the tank. So you mix up the brine. I know the DOT commissioner was talking about, and I believe the city of Manchester kind of said the same thing. There may be an opportunity for us to purchase the brine. If DOT's making it over at the Hooksett shed, or Manchester's got it at the highway garage, we may be able to take our tank truck over there, fill up with the brine they're making, and pay by the gallon. So we need to research that a little more. So that may cut down our upfront expense, because a lot of the expense is that mixing tank and the agitators and stuff to actually make the brine.
Didn't you already try this?
No.
I thought you tried it already, or tested it or something.
No. We, as I said, we've been watching DOT. If you notice, like if you're driving around, DOT does it. They come across 101, they turn around at the 114, 101 intersection, and they actually go into the median islands a little bit. So
Looks like lines down the road.
yeah, you see it. And now Manchester, if you go down Goffstown Back Road the day before a big storm, you'll see the lines, Elm Street, Back Road, all the major roads in Manchester, they're doing it as well. And I've purposely driven around in the early parts of a storm to compare those sections to other sections. And then at the end of the storm, how quickly the roads are cleaned up again. And I'm convinced that the brine does, it's marginal. It's not like magic powder. It still snows and it's still ice. But it gives you that advantage in the beginning of the storm. It makes the cleanup quicker at the end.
It decreases the ability for the ice to immediately start to,
Yeah.
because it breaks it down before or as it's hitting.
Yeah, and it's, calcium chloride, we used to use calcium chloride. That is very corrosive for the trucks. Matter of fact, those older trucks, that's probably what ate the metal more than the salt. So we discontinued using calcium chloride just because it was chewing up the trucks.
That's what I was.
Bad.
And
You
the
use
brine,
calcium
is
chloride.
less expensive than salt, right?
Well, you're
Is it?
you're using your salt in suspension, so the cost of the salt's the same, but you're using a lot less tons of
Just
salt.
to
for the
spread it out
miles
over a
road.
bigger area.
And more efficiently spreading it. You're not getting it bouncing off like you do with dry salt. So technology, it's kind of become a proven technology, but it does cost some money to get it set up. And as of right now, we anticipate it's going to become a requirement. The Kendall Hadley drainage, again, this has been around for a while. We hired a consultant to study this after the Mother's Day floods. Dow Brook is the brook that comes down from the avenues, first, second, third, and it cuts across North Mass, comes right under Town Hall here, through the parking lot and under the Gap building and out by the hardware store. It just does not have the capacity to handle the amount of flow from now that the village is built up the way the village is built up. So we have a design to put a new drainage structure and divert a large part of the brook through a large box culvert right down Kendall Hadley Way. But it's a lot of money. Hoping to get a grant, but I don't hold out a lot of hope that we're gonna get that grant. So I expect this will just keep kind of floating around in the matrix until it becomes part of a bigger plan.
Other than that, you're looking at 1.4 million.
Yeah, which we're hoping to get a hazardous mitigation
Yeah.
grant, so our share is more like 280,000 if we got the grant, but we had to do a cost-benefit analysis for the FEMA application, and it just isn't there. You know, even with all the flooding that happened downtown, we'd have to flood many times to justify $1 million. Related to this, again, this is a project's been floating around for a while. It's the reconstruction of Main Street in North Mass. It's a very expensive project. It is obviously the heart and soul of the village. We are currently working with a committee on our CMAC project, which is the intersection project that got approved in this year's budget. The reason that's significant is, you know, they're looking at some of these intersections, and we have our master plan that was done, our village master plan, and one of the options on the table that we're looking at on that CMAC project is actually a new connector street to create kind of a big one-way loop, which we'll hear about next week at the public hearing. But it's kind of, you know, I bring it out, all of this up right now because we go back to that Kendall Hadley drain. That is right here on these maps, right in the middle of everything. We have North Mast, which serves as the major gateway into our village. Obviously, Main Street is the heart of our downtown. There's a lot going on. We have the land that's been proposed to be donated right in the middle of all this. So, you know, I think we just as a town got to think about a very comprehensive look at everything happening in this area and think about incorporating it all into a well thought out design. I think that's what we're asking for with this. The first year, I believe, it's 240,000 or so for design in the first year, and then it goes out and constructed over 2 years.
Why is this necessary?
A couple of reasons. One, the infrastructure in these roads is gone. You know, it's one thing to look at the pavement, but the drainage infrastructure is non-existent. We have the flooding issues and the traffic safety issues. So all of that, in my view, is necessary. This be nice to have, but again, it's all part of the same project. We have to rebuild the streets. There's just no way around it. We've been deferring them because there was that state grant money we were hoping to get. With again the road toll not passing, I don't believe there's state money out there for us to wait for. That could change next year, but as of right now, the state doesn't have the funding to really help us. It did make it through the next 10-year plan, though, right? I think it stayed on the regional 10-year plan. So we did manage to get it back into the 10-year plan. And what DOT has historically done is, you know, say it, Governor and Council, it survives the whole process, and Governor and Council approve it in the next round of the 10-year plan, which won't get approved till next year. And we decided to build it in 4 years or 3 years. We would still get reimbursed the money at a later time. So it's, you know, even if we decided locally we want to do this project sooner than DOT can give us the money, we would still get the money later.
I think what part of Peter's question is, and Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we understand roads and infrastructure need to be rebuilt. Fine, not a problem. But I think where certainly my issue would be is, you know, this is all nice and it's gonna look beautiful, but beautiful costs coinage. And, you know, I mean, if your roof is leaking, you gotta fix the roof before you paint the house.
Right.
You know, and maybe that's a bad analogy, but I think that's where you're coming from, Pete.
Yeah. And
We can't afford to fix the bridges, I mean, and we've got this on year 2015 to 2017 as necessary. I have a hard time with that.
I think,
I
you know, I mean, it's nice, I got no problem with it as being desirable.
yeah, yeah.
Part of it, sure, I'm sure part of it is necessary. Certainly the drainage issues are necessary.
That's
That-
why when
that's-
Peter asked that, that's what I
Yeah,
responded.
yeah,
is
the drainage issues,
Components of it are necessary.
in fact, the drainage issue might even be urgent.
Well, yeah, if we had another flood, it would become urgent really fast.
But, you know, gateway signs and trees and streetscapes are nice, they look beautiful.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that we can afford beautiful right now.
You also have to consider, though, as you're digging up stuff, is it gonna be more efficient to put it in at that point in time, or is it gonna cost you a bunch more money to go back and retrofit something that you just did, you know, 3 years,
We'll
if,
never do this.
you know?
Well, and the big, of course, this all presumes that we're not gonna do a major change in the way traffic flows through the village, which, you know, as this new committee works through its thing and it goes to the selectmen, this whole thing might look totally different, you know, 4, 5, 6, 10 years from now.
Well, that's it, if you're gonna redo the entire Main Street, Elm Street, North Mast intersection, High Street intersection, then
I
this
don't see
may
that being done in
change.
the next 2 to 3 years, or 3 to 4 years.
The intersection?
No, this project.
Oh, this.
Yeah.
This is what I'm talking about,
Hey, let's build another roundabout.
Yeah, okay. When the traffic's backed up down through Main Street here, we'll talk about the roundabout. Okay. But do you understand where I'm coming from? I don't think it's
I know exactly where you're coming from.
I don't think it's necessary. I think it's more of a.
Again,
Now, the
that-
Kendall
that-
Hadley part may be necessary, you know.
The other thing from where I'm sitting too is, and that's why we have the process we have, where, you know, I don't get to do the policy decision. I just, you know, the planning board, it's all been part of the master plan. You know, the Board of Selectmen's accepted the master plan. As a community, we've said, this is what we want to do. So from where I sit, it's like, I gotta fix the road. That's what the community's told me they want. So in my mind, it's necessary.
And yet we got
Whether you guys wanna fund it
and
now.
yet Brian wants to do a master plan revision in the next couple of years.
Well, I mean, we have to.
I understand that. And that may change
Right?
a lot. No, I mean, Carl's gotta put in what he's gotta put in.
I understand that, but we don't have to sit here and say it's necessary. We
Well, I
can
think-
say it's
well, I
desirable.
think-
That's, we have that option.
Right, and I think
You
right
have
now
your
we're
own
getting
column,
more,
and you can.
I think we're getting more into deliberative stuff right
Okay,
now.
that's fine.
Rather than listening to whatever else he's gotta present to us.
Well, the next one is College Road. Again, the street,
This has been in the plan for a long
a
time.
long time. And what we've tried to do is keep it aligned when we rebuild College Road, which right now we're projecting 2017 is when we're gonna rebuild College Road. We really feel, right now, there's no sidewalk on College Road. It is a straight shot from Pizza Market to the main gates of St. Anselm's College to walk right up College Road. There's no sidewalk, there's not even really an adequate shoulder for that to occur. So we're proposing, when we rebuild the street, we add the capacity of a new sidewalk. I believe, I put it on there, I wasn't 100% sure, but I believe the Planned Bernardville thing reached those same conclusions, right, Brian, where they kind of created the big circle down there with
Yes.
connecting pedestrian walks. So, again, I think it fits for the master plan. I know it fits for the old master plan, the corridor studies we've done. This is something we've been talking about for years. we've been plucking away at the gaps in the sidewalks in Bernardville over the last several years, so this is just kind of part of that.
Also, in talking
Overall
to Bill Furlong from St. A's, he said he would be willing to work with us on the portion that they own, figuring out how to, if we need to widen the road and add some sidewalk, or what do we gotta do? You know,
Well,
they,
it benefits St. A's greatly because it's their students that are walking up and down the middle of that road. And that's somewhere that, I mean, I know that because I use that road regularly. And during the school year, if I'm trying to go home at, say, 6 o'clock, there's a lot of kids walking up and down that road.
The next one, we have Catamount and Back Road, line 208 on your matrix. This is another one that's been around as long as I've been around. This was in the matrix. It was part of the corridor studies done back in the early 90s. You all know where this is. It's like a very steep grade coming right down into Back Road. It's a snow and ice nightmare, just how steeply it ties into that busy road. So the plan is to cut the hill down, more gradual grade in, grade it out, improve sight distance. I think we had, but we've probably lost money from developments back there to put towards this, but I don't think we reflect any.
it may still be sitting around.
Yeah, it wasn't a ton of money.
It's not a
going.
lot, yeah.
When all those developments happen out there, this was discussed as part of their approvals, that sooner or later we'd do this. And it's just, it's another one of those, do we really need to do it? And, you know, even we show it as desirable, but, you know, really it is something we need to.
Do you have an incident report from there, or have there been many incidents?
We can get that. I don't have it right now, but we could get it. I'm aware of some, so I know there has been some, but I don't think we have like 4 or 5 a year. I think it's,
I get stuck there in the wintertime.
well, and that's the
I
incident.
use that. Those are probably more of the incidents. And when you do get stuck there, you have the possibility of sliding back down into Goffstown Back Road, which could then cause additional incidents.
This one is quickly becoming the bane of my existence. We have, how many are in 60, 40 something?
It was 60-something.
60 something?
If you're counting
Swales?
swales too.
Yeah. Between our detention ponds and treatment swales, over the last 5 years, we've inventoried all of them. You know, starting back in the early 80s, they became required of every development that was built. And of course, no one ever thinks, or we don't think that, geez, the new pond out on Tyler Drive, why would we go even look at that? It's a brand new road. Well, Tyler Drive's been there 20 years now, so it's not a new road anymore. And there's a lot of overgrown, filled in with sediment. So all of these things probably are maintenance items. They probably were, but at this point, they're so significant. You can see how much our estimates are. It's basically, you go in there and rebuild the whole thing, and when you go into these, there's permitting issues and a lot of things you have to do, a lot of steps you have to take. It's not as simple as, hey, let's just send the excavator up there tomorrow and have at it. So we've started in the wintertime going in and cutting the vegetation out so we can really see what we're dealing with. This new stormwater permit, these now are going to be defined parts of our stormwater system. In the past, all we had to look at was our outfalls. Now these are going to have to be spelled out as part of our drainage and stormwater systems. So how we deal with it and pay for it is what we need to figure out. But we have a dozen of wells. As a matter of fact, I think they're right here. You know, we've got several that we've looked at in detail that, you know, need immediate attention. And then there's the entire list, like I said, with all the swales and ponds. We have over 60 features that we need to deal with. These are the most pressing ones. So, you know, I see this as a kind of an ongoing cost, whether you call it drainage reconstruction or drainage things, but we need to deal with it. It doesn't fit in our current maintenance budget now.
So you say 2012 cost, that's what the cost was to do it in 2012?
Yeah.
We created all these numbers.
Okay,
we
and what do you
tried to
put, a
nail
5
them.
percenter in there?
Yeah, that's what that is 5%.
That's the little one, okay.
Yeah,
That's assuming a 5%.
right.
So is it not possible to increase your maintenance budget, or? you
Well,
gotta
and
get that
that's the
approved through
discussion
selectmen?
you folks have, is if this is a maintenance function, then we wanna, let's just put it in the drainage maintenance line, okay. That's what I'll say when I go in with the increase in the budget line for drainage maintenance. But either way, those kind of numbers don't fit in our $30,000 or $40,000 line we have for all the routine maintenance we have to do on our drainage system. So one way or the other, we have to figure out how to deal with these. We have proposed to put it as a major CIP project over several years, but you guys can certainly debate that and decide.
Carl, go back to that slide again just for a moment, please. The significant variation, is that due to the condition or the size or both in terms
You
of
mean
cost? I mean,
between
you've got,
ponds?
for example, you've got Juniper Drive at
It's
19,000.
It's all, it's size, it's age, it's where it's located. Some of these older ponds, back in the 80s, early 90s, there was no consideration given to how do you access the pond to clean it. Nowadays, we make the developer build a gravel road, and the pond has to be accessible. But we can actually get vehicles in there to maintain it back. The ones that were done back in the 80s and the early 80s, early 90s, they don't have any of that. They're out behind the houses. Nobody wanted them out front where you could see them, so they're out in the woods. There's no access, there's no way to get there, so we have to literally build a road through somebody's backyard to get back to the pond to maintain it. So that, all of that's factored into these various projects.
Okay.
The Uncanunic Dam, last year, we funded a study. The state made us fund a study. We got a letter of deficiency from the Dam Bureau. So last year, we funded, I think it was $30,000. We hired Du Bois and King to do a study of the dam right there. They, in fact, did concur with DES that the dam needs to be rehabbed or replaced. They put forward four different options that they considered. And the one that we're kind of hooking on to is there is a cheaper option, which involves removing the dam altogether. We didn't think we ought to propose that. So this is
Eliminating the lake?
This is the most cost-effective way to keep the lake there in its current state. So, we're going to get through design this year, I hope, and be out to bid next year for construction. This is one of those ones that I'd love to tell you all have a choice on this, but I think the only choice is how much do you want to spend to fix it? Because if we don't fix it, the DES will be down here making us fix it. So anyway, we're walking through the process. That's our recommendation. Be happy to share with you the other recommendations, but they just cost more money. So my guess is that just some quick slides of what the major issues that were identified are. This culvert was something DOT pointed out to us. This is under the intersection down by Pizza Hut, right? That's that one. Mystic Brook where it crosses. There's a little dam upstream of it. This is exactly the situation we had in the big culvert on Mountain Road, where the arch itself isn't bad, but the trough is rotted right out of it, and it's all undermined. So we're looking at the same fix that we did on Mountain Road, where we go in and pour a trough, a concrete trough. But it's a pretty substantial culvert and pretty substantial damage, and DOT was out there inspecting it because they thought it was theirs, the guys that were out inspecting it. And they realized, Jesus,
Couldn't convince it was theirs?
we tried. We tried to convince them that it really was.
Feet, right?
Yeah. So, anyway, they were nice enough to call us and pointed out that you may want to take a look. We've already gone through this, so I'll kind of skip all this stuff. Unless you want to look at it all again.
I'm all set with that.
And then, these are our other equipment. So line 197, this is transfer station generator. This was identified when we did our hazardous mitigation plan upgrade several years ago. The police department, fire department, DPW's maintenance garage, all those things have backup generators. The transfer station does not. We call it desirable only because it's debatable whether it really would be an emergency, but I think if we were out of power for a week or so and trash was not able to be moved, it might become a public health issue. We have figured out how to get a small generator on the fuel pumps, which are part of the transfer station power grid. So if we're without power, we can at least get the fuel pumps working. It's not the best setup in the world, but we can get the fuel pumps working. But the compactors in the trash building do not run if we don't have power. So how we would deal with a major shutdown.
Did you say that your garage has a generator?
Up at the shop, we have a generator, yeah.
And
Yeah.
is that for the administrative offices?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so up there, we're functional. Down at the transfer station, we're not. So we have a grant potential from, emergency management. That's what we're banking on, so our share would be $30,000. Remains to be seen whether we'll get the grant, but that's our plan. This is in here after what we've learned this year with what we would have to do with MSHA to get involved in this kind of operation. I'm not sure it'll stay. For now, we're keeping it in there. As we get into the Barnard property, that pit, and we start really trying to move material around, I don't know if it's going to make sense to keep bringing a contractor in the way we do now, or whether having our own equipment there would be better. But we put this in several years ago in anticipation, but like I said, what we learned this year when we started talking to MSHA about us operating that kind of equipment, I tend to think we'll shy away from it, but for now,
And
it's
for now, you
still
want to leave it
there.
in essentially as a placeholder?
Yeah.
So you won't have a problem with me scratching out 16 and putting 19?
No, yeah, I mean, we can always go back and revisit that if we
Okay.
find it's a big
Except
deal.
for the
but,
year?
Yeah. The replacement trash barrels have been actually in there for a while. We keep deferring them. I think it's time we start thinking about not deferring them quite so much. The vast majority of these barrels were bought in 1995. They had a 10-year warranty, so they're pretty well beyond their manufacturer's expected life. And we are starting to see more and more of them. They're getting pretty brittle. It's not so bad when we only have to replace them here and there, but if they start failing wholesale, it's a lot of money. So it's $250,000 worth of barrels. Our idea is we do it over like 5 years and we really start to cycle them out.
How many barrels is that by?
Must be about 5,000. That's roughly how many homes we're servicing.
No, but 50,000 buys what?
Well, if you buy them in bulk, I
1/5 of
think
that,
they're
so
down
it'd
to
be
like
1,000.
$45 a barrel.
How much?
$45 a barrel. or
So
something.
say $50 a barrel will buy us 1,000 barrels.
1,000. And that's pretty consistent with what he just said, because he needs 5 years and 5,000 barrels.
Yeah.
So 1,000 a year.
Do you have any left in stock, so to speak?
We go through them, we do buy. It's not cost effective to buy a few of them, so when we buy them, we buy a whole trailer load. And so we don't buy them every year, especially since new homes have slowed down and everything. I'm not exactly sure. I think we didn't buy any in 12, so we're probably going to have to buy a load in 13. But when we buy a load, it's not 1,000. 1,000 is there's several loads. I think our budget for just our ongoing replacement, I think we budget about 15,000 a year to just, for new barrels, for new homes, and the ones we have to replace.
So, saying that, Carl, then wouldn't this number, shouldn't it be like maybe 35,000? If you've already got 15,000 in your, that you're using normally?
Well, keep in mind, we're also doing recycling. We're just talking here about the old trash barrels. But for maintenance in new homes, we're also buying new ones. So, maybe 45 or 40,000 or something like that a year, but we gotta start thinking about a wholesale replacement of more than we're doing now.
And again, I think this has probably been in the matrix at least 4 years anyway.
Yeah. And that is the conclusion of our show.
Okay. It is 8:55 under our internal rules. If we need to go after 9 o'clock, we need to do that by motion.
Is there any reason to go by?
Were you planning on also
Unless
talking
anybody's
about,
got any additional questions for Carl.
Carl, were you guys also planning on talking about that other drainage, or no, not tonight?
I don't think we have enough for CIP. We don't have enough
It's too
information.
conceptual right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was frightening today, though, when he seemed so adamant it was gonna get released, so. It's gonna be a reality. The Budget Committee will hear about it, I'm sure.
We don't meet until September, so.
All right.
By then, we'll have it.
I do have something I'd like to get, line 203.
Bog Road Bridge replacement.
Well, I'm sorry, not 204.
Pleasant Street, Mass
Yeah,
Road.
There's nothing for Carl, it's just something Brian has to fix that up, because that whole thing got changed around, right?
Well, it got approved in the budget last year
Right.
for this amount.
Yes,
And
but we didn't, it says anticipated 446,000 grant. We got the grant, right?
yeah, I mean, I can update the note.
Yeah, exactly what and then off-site improvement fees of 150, we didn't get that because that didn't go through.
We haven't gotten it, but we
Right.
still anticipate it to come through at some point.
But that's, has nothing to do with that article now because
Right.
selectmen changed it.
If and when we do get it, it will just go into the coffer and replace whatever money came out of it.
Exactly,
Pay
so it
for
has
it.
nothing, that's, the off-site improvement fees don't have anything to do with that article, that number anymore.
Okay, our next meeting is August 1st.
I will not be here. I'll be in Caribou, Maine, August 1st.
Right.
Going to the Double D? No, that's in Presque Isle.
I'll be in Presque Isle that same day.
And that shows,
Double D.
that shows as a callback and deliberative workshop, which means that we have now completed all of the regular presentations. Because we didn't have a quorum at the last meeting, we told admin and Parks and Rec that they would have the opportunity to come back again if they wanted to. Have you heard anything from anybody, Brian, or do you want to represent any of that stuff next time around?
I don't have a problem with doing it. I think they may want to do it, especially because there wasn't that much. So I'll ask the question, and if
It's
there
really
is a
just
desire,
It's really just Derek and Rick.
yeah. If there is a desire, though, to come back, I'll invite them, and we can have them come in and talk to us again.
Carl, I don't know if you're going to want to come back on,
Play on it.
you are planning? Yeah, because there's stuff that really had to be filled in that we
And there
don't
were
have.
a lot of members missing, and obviously we've got a lot of stuff, so I'll just plan on.
Is that August 1st, huh?
Yeah, August 1st, Megan.
I have that meeting tonight.
You just come to sit there and,
Taking it all
take it all in and,
Fill in.
yeah. All right, anything else before we call it an evening? Brian, anything?
Nope.
Pete? Nope. Alan?
I'm good.
Dale?
Motion adjourned.
All right, motion to adjourn by Alan,
Quick.
second by Peter, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Good night, thank you very much.
Night, Mrs. McGillicuddy.